Welcome to the Business of Podcast. I'm your host Deepak from India. We are honored to welcome Dr. Omar Rodríguez-Vilá, professor in the practice of marketing and academic director of education at Goizueta's Business and Society Institute at Emory University's Goizueta Business School as our distinguished guest on today's podcast. Dr. Omar earned his PhD in marketing from Emory University's Goizueta Business School in 2012. Before joining Goizueta, he was a faculty member at the Scheller College of Business, Georgia Institute of Technology. Recognized for his excellence in teaching, Dr. Omar has been named Core Professor of the Year 6 times over his 8-year academic career. His research explores the forces transforming marketing practice with a particular focus on environmental and social sustainability. His Harvard Business Review article, Competing on Social Purpose, published in 2017, remains one of the most widely read pieces on the topic and was republished in 2020 in a special edition on leadership and purpose. Currently, he leads research on how brands communicate societal benefits on social media, the marketplace practices on anti-racist brand, and how firms evolve marketing capabilities to thrive in technology-driven markets. His recent work, Is Your Marketing Organization Ready for What's Next?, appeared in the issue of Harvard Business Review. Prior to his academic career, Dr. Omar held leadership roles at the Coca-Cola Company, including Global Vice President of Integrated Marketing Communications and Integrated Marketing Director for Coca-Cola China. Today, Dr. Omar shares insights from his acclaimed book, Good Growth: How Brands Win with Social Impact. It's my pleasure to now welcome Dr. Omar Rodríguez-Vilá to the conversation. Dr. Omar, we are truly honored that you have accepted our invitation and delighted to have you join us today.
Thank you, Deepak. It's great to be here having this conversation with you. I know it's very late for you, and I appreciate you accommodating my availability. But I'm excited to have a dialogue about this.
Thank you. Professor, your book frames sustainability not just as a moral imperative, but as a growth opportunity. How can companies shift their mindset from seeing social impact as a cost to viewing it as a driver of revenue?
Yeah, it's a great way to start the conversation. And let me expand the contrast that you outlined, because you said, from a cost to a driver of revenue. I actually think that from the research that we've done, me and my co-author Sundar Bharadwaj, the contrast is really about managers and investors, not just managers, seeing social impact investments oftentimes as distractions. See, as basically focusing on those issues may take time, attention, focus away from the hard task of just competing in the market, right? And in fact, in our study with many companies and how they've addressing this intersection, I often heard managers talk about social impact and sustainability almost as a tax, like something that maybe I need to pay attention to, but I don't see a clear return on immediately. All of those are ways of thinking about it that are limiting progress, are limiting opportunities. Now, on the other side of things is people like me, or managers that really believe that social impact can be an opportunity. Uh, we have been guilty of framing it as almost like we should do it because it's the right thing to do, you see. And that's also problematic because growing your business is also the right thing to do. Making profit goals is also the right thing to do. Paying your employees is also the right thing to do. So kind of promoting investments in social impact through a lens of doing it because it's the right thing to do is a very limiting and constraining approach that sometimes managers take. At the same time, seeing it as a distraction can be also very limiting. And I think the unlock here is to shift your attention from social impact as something you do as a company to social impact as value you can create for your customers. And I think the moment you start framing sustainability and social impact as a customer opportunity, that's when the risk of distraction almost like dissipates, and it becomes naturally the right thing to do because it's going to help your business. So really, it's about focusing on the customer, not on your brand and your brand values.
Professor, you introduced the concept of social impact markets. Can you explain what these are and why they are becoming a critical focus for brands today?
Yeah, so in a way, I was just telling you that in order to deal with the contrast, you should think about creating customer value, because that's really what's going to help drive growth. Well, one thing that's interesting about the impact of sustainability in the market is that it's very distributed. It's not the same in different industries. It varies a lot by product categories. And I'm talking specifically, and maybe this will be important for your listeners to clarify my work and my scope. I'm talking about sustainability in the demand side of the equation, not in the supply side, right? So firms may have a long list of ESG goals, or sustainability goals, that they are acting on for different reasons, regulatory reasons, reputational reasons, cost reasons. But my work really looks at the demand side. Is like, to what extent sustainability or social impact benefits actually create value for customers and drive growth. So in order for that to happen, you need to have a large enough segment of the market in your category or your industry that sees value in it. And that's that's the notion of a social impact market. So, what is a market? A market, for instance, a market for electric vehicles or a market for non-alcoholic beer, those are kind of newer markets. When do markets form? They don't form solely on the supply, right? They form really because of the demand. A market doesn't form because the product is available. A market forms when there is demand for it. And so now think about social impact as a potential benefit. And the question really is, do customers in your industry care enough about it so that it becomes a decision criteria when they're selecting you versus your competitors? If that's true in a large enough segment of your market, that's when we say you have an opportunity, because the size of the social impact market in your category merits the investments, right? So there's research that was done by New York University, the Stern School of Business, and their sustainability group. And they looked at the presence of social impact attributes in consumer packaged good products in the US over the last, I think now they have tracked maybe 8 years. I think the most recent data is up until 2024. And they look at the SKU level, at the specific product level, which comparing the growth rates of products that have social impact benefit claims like organic or sustainable agriculture or fair trade or recyclability or moving away from plastic altogether into new forms of packaging versus products that did not. And what they find is that the products that have social impact benefits, overall, as the market share, have a smaller share of the market, but they're growing significantly faster, right? So that is a signal that there is demand emerging across many different categories, um, eh, for social impact benefits. That means there's social impact markets forming across categories. And that's really at the beginning of the process. Because if there is no social impact market in your category, maybe you should not bring social impact into the demand side, right? Keep it in the supply side.
Professor, many executives worry about the risk of taking a public stance on social or environmental issues. How can companies navigate this risk while still creating meaningful impact?
Yeah, this is a common concern, and it really gets to the core of some of the work we share in the book. I will put it this way. We actually don't think that taking a stand is necessary to achieve good growth. See, the whole idea of taking a stand, um, there are moments when that works. There are certain brands and certain market conditions where that works. I'm not going to take it completely out. But that's really not what our research and our book is about. Um, our work is really more about thinking of social impact as a feature or an attribute of your product that helps bring distinction into how you compete. It's not about the stance you take. It's more about the benefits you offer. See, and you know, taking a stand takes you into the idea of what our brands believe in, what are our values, and how do we communicate those values. All of that work, or that way of thinking about the role of a brand in social impact, is what we call version 1.0. There was a lot of that work that was done in the last 15 years. Um, some very successfully, um, many really with efforts that did not last, right? And some with efforts that generated a lot of controversy and negative backlash, right? And I think part of the issue is that those taking a stand ultimately takes you away from the customer, and it puts the focus on your brand and the social cause, not the customer and their needs. And there are many people in marketing that believe that the reason to do that is because customers are expecting companies to take stands. But that expectation that we have claimed as marketers oftentimes is not grounded on a detailed understanding of consumer dynamics in your category. Because what we find in our own research is that, you know, customers may claim that in general terms, but when it comes to buying products in different categories, social impact plays a very different role. So there are no general expectations by consumers of brands taking stands. So it can, you know, that whole approach can lead you into this field of distraction that we were talking earlier.
Professor, could you share a real world example of a brand that has successfully integrated social or environmental benefits into its product strategy, and what lessons other companies can learn?
Yeah. So in fact, this would be a good way to clarify the contrast I was trying to outline before, because, you know, what we call version 1.0 of managing that intersection between sustainability and brands, kind of social impact and growth, was about identifying a set of brand values and communicating those values to consumers, right? Um, Version 2.0 is what we highlight more on the book, which is it's not about the brand values, it's about the customer value, the value you create for customers, and how you integrate social impact into what makes your product better for them. And I'll give you an example. It's a company called Blueland. It was started around 2019. One of the co-founders is Sarah Pai Yu, and you know, the need she saw in the marketplace is around cleaning products at home, and it's not necessarily about how well the cleaning products worked, but what we do with the packaging after we're done. And you know, her realization is that for the most part, the whole industry was grounded on, and the business model was predicated on waste, because it depended on you throwing away the plastic bottle that you use for your detergent or your glass window cleaner or your dishwasher and get a new one. And she saw, going back to our point about social impact market, she saw a larger segment of the market, maybe not 80%, but there was a growing segment of the market that was beginning to feel a pain point, a hassle with that end of life stage. Okay. And therefore, she saw an opportunity for creating an offering that eliminated the plastic waste. And she launched Blueland, which is a completely different model of delivering household cleaning products. And I encourage your listeners to look them up to learn more about the details of it. But in a sense, you get bottles that are durable, that last 5 years, and what they are selling you is tablets that you add the water at home to create the cleaning formula, which could vary depending on the dishwasher or surface cleaner or window cleaner or uh, detergent. And it cuts across different cleaning occasions and product types, but the model eliminates the need for plastic waste. It has been tremendously successful. And now it has gained distribution in massive retailers like Target and Whole Foods. And importantly, it displaces the incumbent, right? So if you think about the current companies that are selling those products that are predicated on waste in order for the business model to work, and Blueland is growing, what can the incumbents do to stop them? You see, they cannot easily respond to that because Blueland's offering are changing the supply chain dynamics. And in a way, the connection I'm trying to make here is that what Blueland has done with social impact is an example of disruptive innovation. Now, normally we think of disruptive innovation as technology, like ChatGPT, LLM models, but social impact, and we give many examples in the book, can also be a source of disruptive innovation. And in this case, by seeing a pain point or a customer need that was hidden in the end of life. I can give you many other examples also of the beginning of life. But the main thing that I want to highlight is how did these startups, and sometimes these existing companies too, uncover these opportunities is by expanding the customer journey map. You see, customer journey maps normally used in service experience management or marketing start with when the customer has the need to when the customer purchases the product, right? And the companies that are finding opportunities for social impact are doing is that they're extending that journey map to include the beginning of life of the product and the end of life of the product. So you can think of it really as a product lifecycle analysis, but with the customer journey dynamics embedded in it. So you're looking at sentiment. And the moment you realize there is an unmet need emerging in your market about either where your product comes from or what happens when it's done, you have right there an opportunity for disruption. There's also opportunities in the middle, but I think that's one of the major takeaways and that we explore a lot more in the book.
Professor, how does digital technology change the way brands can measure and communicate their social impact to consumers and stakeholders?
Um, yeah, I think that let me take the word digital out of your question because I think that your question speaks to more than just digital technology, like technology overall, right? And technology overall um, empowers, enables, augments, accelerates this social impact work in many ways. Maybe not necessarily unique ways, but in very useful ways. The first one is, one of the challenges of good growth is finding the specific societal need that you should focus on your brand on, and then finding the specific job that your brand will do in that societal need. And for that, you need a really good understanding about those societal issues. So you need root causes and you need to, issues like education or access to healthcare or plastic or carbon emissions. These are all complex social issues. Very difficult for a marketing manager to get their head around, right? So, the access to LLM models today makes it so much faster and viable for a brand manager to begin to understand and find the right connection between their brand and those larger societal needs that could actually find the right intersection, right? That where their brand can make a real impact, but also where that impact can help them compete. So you're really looking to address both of those sides. Also, there are, another challenge of good growth is finding the right partners, because good growth, uh, it's really a team sport. Like, you can't do it alone. Because again, these issues are complex and you need people that understand them better than you do. You bring the resources, the nonprofit organizations or NGOs or community organizations that are dealing with those issues bring the know-how, right? And there are technology platforms like Ubuntu, that, and I encourage your listeners to check them out. It's UBUNTOO, and they help connect startups with emerging technologies in sustainability, new materials, technologies for carbon capturing or renewable energy from all over the world, to companies that are looking for those solutions. So when you're managing a product or when you're managing a service and you're working in enhancing your product, you normally talk to your R&D team and say, what innovations can we bring into the product offering and then claim, right, in our marketing work. That process is the same, but instead of just going to your R&D team, you can be looking in places like Ubuntu for innovations that would help you make a social impact difference that you can also claim in the way you compete in the market. And then the last place where I think technology is making a big difference is in your ability to micro target the intervention. So not everybody's going to care about social impact. Not every moment in the customer journey and buying process is right to talk about social impact. So uh, particularly if you have a commercial activity that happens primarily in an app or a website, then you can, depending on the person, you can customize a lot better the role you're going to give social impact in that transaction or in that conversation. And if you know that customer really cares about it, maybe you put it more central. And if you don't have reason to believe that that customer is looking for that, then you make it more peripheral or even absent, and that's fine, right? So the ability to customize also is something that technology is helping make social impact more effective.
Professor, in your book, you highlight data-informed implementation. What role does analytics play in turning social impact initiatives into profitable growth?
Yeah, I think that a key, it plays a big role. And the main reason for that is twofold, at the beginning and at the end. At the beginning, because social impact requires rigor in the business case. And you need to be able to articulate a financial case for investing in social impact and pursuing good growth. And for that, you need reliable market signals. I'll come back to that in a moment. But then you also need, at the end, the ability to understand how your social impact investments are not only helping you grow, but are actually making a difference in the societal issue. See, if you decide to play the good growth game, you need to care about both sides. It's not just about your growth. You need to make sure that you're making a difference in that issue that you selected. Measuring that can be also hard. So making analytics central to the way you organize your work on social impact, it's really important. On the beginning side, on building your business case, one of the challenges of version 1.0, as I talked about earlier, is that it was relying oftentimes on weak signals of market demand, or even very noisy signals. And one issue that's commonly discussed in the sustainability literature is kind of referred to as the attitude behavior gap, where we see consumers express an intention let's say, willingness to pay more for products that are sustainable, or interest for companies to do these sort of things. But then when those products become available, researchers do not see those intentions translate into real behavior. And there are many ways of explaining that. Most of them put the blame on the consumer, right? Like, consumers are not reliable, they don't know what they want, their preferences are not clear, etc. We take a different approach at explaining that. We think the problem is not people, we think the problem is the research methodology being used. Because many of the research reports that, at least that we saw come out in the last decade, that were advocating for an opportunity for social impact in the market, we're using declare preference methods. So we're using questions to consumers where they're asking them directly, would you like companies to do X or Y, right? Would you prefer a brand that does X or Y? And any question like that, where the benefit that's being offered to the respondents have a moral component to it or an ethical component to it, is at risk of response bias, right? Um, and that needs to be addressed in the research methodology. So we shouldn't be surprised that there is this gap if what you're using are declared methods of preference. So you need to use experiments, you need to use declare methods, derived methods of establishing what customers really value. And you cannot ask social impact questions in absolute terms. You have to ask them relative to other benefits the product offers, including price, right? So there are many things that on the research side, managers can do to strengthen the signals, the quality of the demand signals they're getting, to then improve the business case and end up with cases that are more credible, more reliable, and enable them to actually make better decisions, right? Like, do we actually do this or not? And what should we expect as a result of it?
Professor, for organizations just starting their journey into social impact, what are the first practical steps they should take to align their brand with purpose without overextending resources?
Yeah, I think a great place to start is first of all, don't frame social impact as a requirement. Okay, uh, explore it as an opportunity that could have a go or no go decision. And start with doing just an audit of your category in the country where you're competing in. Okay, and look at three things. Are there any what we call demand signals? Are there any signals in the market for customers interested in products or services that are associated with a social benefit? Okay. I told you about the plastic before, right? So seeing customers complain on Reddit or on social media about the plastic waste is a demand signal, right? It's a signal of an unmet need. So do you see any of that in your category? Second, um, do you see any competitive actions that are indicative of people kind of pursuing these opportunities? So do you see startups creating, normally stars there, like smaller firms that are entering into your category and adding a social impact into their value proposition? How are they doing, right? And what are customers' response to it? I think that's another good step to take as you're doing this audit. So look for demand signals, look for competitive actions, and then look for the potential presence of unmet needs by exploring end of life, beginning of life. Are there any externalities there that we are causing or the industry is causing that nobody's doing about? And check if customers care, right? Those three steps should not take a lot of time and definitely doesn't need to take a lot of money, but it creates, brings clarity to decide, should we pursue good growth or not? And if the answer is yes, then you actually go in and you investigate and you can follow the steps we outline in the book. But I would start by an audit and just assessing, is this even an opportunity right now? And the answer most likely is either yes or not yet. I think that there are very few industries where social impact is not going to become relevant at some point.
Professor, how can social impact become a central element of a company's competitive strategy rather than just a marketing or CSR initiative?
I think in the same way that any other opportunity would become central to a company, right? Like what would make AI or whatever, some innovative product become central? If the company leaders are convinced that that's going to be a great way to drive growth, right? So in the same way, the managers that are interested in pursuing this should look at social impact as, is this a way for us to grow? And focus on the business case, not on the moral case. I know that there's many of us that also have a deep belief and conviction that businesses have an important role to play in addressing societal needs and in nurturing or even promoting well-being of people and the planet. All of that is true. But when we're operating in a for-profit kind of environment, we almost need to put that aside and really focus on crafting a clear business case. And if we have that, we have what we need to make it a central part of the company's kind of competitive strategy. And if we don't, it won't be. It doesn't matter how lofty of a goal or how ambitious, you may get a good reception in your PowerPoint presentation, but you're not going to get the resources over time to really compete on it.
Professor,
At the end of the
yeah,
day, sorry, at
please.
the end of the day, innovation is really at the core of competing on social impact and addressing some of these issues. And, the example I gave you of Blueland illustrates that. And there's really very few incentives that are more effective at driving innovation than the pursuit of profit. So follow that, and I think you can change many things.
Professor, your book is aimed at C-suite leaders, product managers, and even NGOs. How can collaboration across these diverse stakeholders enhance both social outcomes and business growth?
Yeah, I think that, in doing the research for the HBR article you talked about, and which eventually the book, we studied and we interviewed many managers that led initiatives at the intersection between social impact and business growth, right? Um, and one thing that we noticed that was very interesting is that many of these leaders um, that were working in the companies managing these programs or products had in their backgrounds an NGO experience. They had worked maybe earlier in their careers in the nonprofit sector. And I bring it up because the collaboration that you asked me about, which is so essential, is like a necessary condition. As I said earlier, good growth is a team sport. You can't do it alone. But this is cross-sectional collaboration, right? So you are collaborating with organizations that see the world very differently from you if you're working at a company, right? They see the world through the lens of the social mission first. And managers in companies see the world through their profit goals first. And those couldn't be more different. So, in order for you to be a good growth leader, you need to be able to be a bridge between those two worlds. And that means understanding the nonprofit mindset, understanding how nonprofit organizations, what motivates them, what turns them off, what do they need, And so you have a responsibility as a marketing leader to become a bridge. Because the nonprofit, your partners won't. I mean, they have a mission, they have their hands full. But if you're trying to connect these dots, then you have to lead that. And that starts by getting to understand the way they look at the world and almost like understanding them like if they were your customers, like what are their needs? What are their unmet needs? That kind of approach. I think that that's very, very important, very helpful. And then the other thing that's also a necessary condition for this collaboration to work is for you as the leader to make it very clear what your boundaries are. Where are you going to play a role in support of this social impact? And where do you stop? You see, because these issues are complex, they're large, they need resources, and you're not a nonprofit organization, right? So you need, and in the book, we talk about these 5 different models for how a brand can create social impact. And it's important to know that as a manager that you have options and that some options are more complex than others, some options are more path dependent than others. So to the extent that you can be precise on where in the societal issue you're going to focus on. Let's say the issue might be waterborne illnesses, but you're going to focus specifically on educating elementary school kids on hand washing habits, right? That's it. That's your role right there. Um, there are many other challenges that cause the issue, like access to clean water, water infrastructure, education, social norms. You're not dealing with any of those. You're just focusing on this one. Then you can engage with a partner in the nonprofit side to create something that can make a real difference. And clearly, I'm talking about Lifebuoy, right? As an example, very active in India and other countries, very successful brand that has been able to drive good growth by designing their intersection, but really understanding both sides of the equation, right? That's very important. When you're partnering with the nonprofit sector, you can't partner with a commercial mindset. You can't partner with them in the same way you would partner with other people. So that you need to understand the differences.
Professor, I would like to conclude this episode with one last question. Looking ahead, what trends do you see shaping the future of good growth and social impact market over the next 5 to 10 years? And how should brands prepare now?
Yeah. So yesterday, so I teach a class on good growth here at Emory. And yesterday we were fortunate enough to have Anna Webb Waldron, who's the global marketing vice president at a company called Interface. For some of your listeners that may not know them, Interface is they sell basically commercial grade carpets, flooring, and they are as a company, and their founder, Racy Anderson, who unfortunately passed away a number of years ago, but he is an icon in the pursuit of good growth, of finding that intersection between sustainability and business performance. And Interface is really one of the leaders, certainly in their industry, but overall, of a company that has really been able to find growth by making sustainability core and centric. And she was telling us about the nature of the market dynamics today. And then she made a very interesting comment, which is 80% of their sales efforts are focused on people that don't buy their product, which is fascinating, right? Which is the architects and the interior designers. None of them write the check, but they influence all of the checks, right? Because it is their decisions that eventually get executed by the companies that are making the purchase. And she was alluding to the fact that you almost see a very marked difference in the designers and the architects that have been in the practice for, let's say, 20, 30 years, and what the way they design and what they look for, which is more conventional. And the designers and the architects that have been there in less than 10 years or are just entering. And what the observation she had was that this new generation, which is basically going to shape the industry, right, has been trained on sustainability. They start there. They look at beginning of life, end of life, not just during life, implications of product decisions and design decisions. And in a way, what she's saying is that you can't assess the importance of sustainability by looking at the current climate. You have to look at how the trends are shifting by looking at how demand will shift. And in their industry, demand is shifting very dramatically towards making sustainability as central part of the way that industry moves. And they are miles ahead from their competitors in that, right? So strategically, they're really well positioned to grow. And I tell you that story to answer your question because I think that's very similar in many other industries where the customer base of today still has a lagging effect of customers that really didn't think about these topics very much. But the customer base that's emerging is very conscious about many of these issues. They are experiencing them. They're experiencing either the environmental cost or the social cost of some of kind of the business externalities. And I think that demand is going to begin to shift with social impact at the core of the reason why companies win. So I don't know. I guess we started talking about social impact potentially being seen as a distraction today by many managers, but I think as I look into the future, um, all I see is opportunity.
Listeners, we hope this episode inspire you to think differently about purpose and profit in your own organizations. Thank you, Dr. Omar Rodríguez-Vilá, for sharing your insights and practical strategies on how brands can drive growth through social impact. It's been an enlightening conversation, and we are grateful for your time and expertise. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Deepak. Take care. Huh?